I'm joined today by Yoram Schweitzer, who is the director of the research program at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. In France, this was a first. We'd had, of course, the Charlie Hebdo massacre. It was the first time that on this scale, though, and in such an indiscriminate way, France was attacked in the way that other cities are more used to. It marks a big difference just psychologically for the country.
Yes, indeed. It is a horrifying experience that this country have regretfully had to pass through. I'm sure that you have the resilience to cope with it, and I hope it will be an exclusive event, although we already seen this morning that there were other plans to do it, and I'm sure that there are more culprits that are planning to do it in Paris and in other places in Europe. So this is part of our daily life in the next future.
How does one go about preventing it, preparing for the rest and preventing the sorts of further attacks you talk about?
The main principle of fighting terrorism is have a good intelligence in order to prevent it beforehand. And if something happened and it failed, usually the best way is to have security people trying to minimize the effect of such attacks if it occurred.
You mentioned the question of intelligence. Of course, some of the questions now facing French authorities are what appear to be lapses in their intelligence gathering. A number of the men now known to have been involved were French citizens who went to Syria, who returned from Syria. Presumably, this is something that's going to have to be addressed quite urgently.
Yeah, I suppose. On the other hand, you had quite impressive success while curtailing and finding out the people very rapidly, those who remain at large. So intelligence is not an insurance company. Or sometimes there are failures, sometimes there are lapses, and they should be investigating very thoroughly, which I'm sure that it will be done. And the lesson learned would serve for the next most probable time that you'll have to encounter such events.
How does one go about tracking effectively these sort of suspects? So we're talking, for instance, about a number of the people involved having been followed by French intelligence. They were known to French intelligence services. They were under judicial control in at least two of the cases of French authorities. And yet their communications were allowed to go ahead in such a way that they were able to carry out, plan these attacks, and, as I say, go to and from Syria. How can anyone be watched sufficiently that this kind of thing is prevented?
First of all, you cannot watch everybody, and you cannot watch everybody all of the time, because we are living in democracy, thanks God. There are also requirements to bring people to justice based on facts, and sometimes it has to do with trying to detect these people in order to find out what they are planning. So it's a tricky business. Sometimes it's going out of hand, as happened in other places in other times.
One of the debates, of course, it's only just beginning and that we get regularly in the wake of these sorts of attacks in democracies, and it's natural, is the question of security versus liberty. How do you protect civil liberties, even while you go about ensuring that these things do not happen again? Are the tools in place that our security services, our intelligence services, can monitor people sufficiently? Or does our legislation need to go much further to giving our security services the tools, the means that they need to keep an eye on people?
Sometimes you need to give much more serious leverages to work upon against terrorists, but if there are limitations that are being put on private rights of the citizen, it should be very short and not enlarged to a large, we know the risks of letting too vast precautions and legislation that may bring the victory to the hands of the terrorists quite easily. So if there are times of dire straits, those strict rules should be applied for a certain very limited time and then jump back into the regular life. Hopefully it will be very soon.
The attacks also marked the first time that suicide bombers had been involved on French soil. It's something that, of course, Israelis are much more used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. In France, it was a first. The psychology of the people involved, of course, will need to be better understood. how someone can strap a belt to themselves, go into a public place with the idea of killing a maximum number of people. It just seems extraordinary when you consider it. But I suppose understanding that psychological profile is key. Yeah.
First of all, there is no one profile. We have seen, just give you some data, because we have a project in our institute that I lead that detects global suicide terrorism. This year we have already more than 500 suicide attacks globally, with more than 700 perpetrators that were carrying out. So it's not exclusive to France, and it's not exclusive to Israel. Israel, thanks God, does not have suicide bombings in the last years, because we managed to curtail it. So there is not one profile, because there are today 9 years, 11 years old young girls that are blowing themselves up in Nigeria, and there were 45 to 72 ladies that were also taking part in this atrocity. So there is a variety, although most of the time we are talking about young males between the age of teens till the age of mid-20s, although we saw in your case that there were 29 years old people. We need to understand that the basic principle is that, I would say it in one keyword, ignorance in their religion, which allows people to incite and to prove to them that this is the only and the best way to serve God and to be shaheed, to witness the greatest of God. And second, they have to nullify and dehumanize the victims in order to be able to do it.
You mentioned being able to do it. One of the things that's emerged early on in this investigation is that this drug, Captagon, was found or may have been found. There is, of course, religious fervor, but it takes more than that for someone to be able to carry this sort of thing out, doesn't it?
I think very rarely drug is involved. It may be in cases. There may be somebody activating them, but mostly these are people that were led to believe this is the best way to serve religion, although we had cases when religion was not present and it wasn't Islamic religion that was behind it. You have to bring the person to a state of conviction that he was doing the right thing for a cause which is greater than himself, that he will be rewarded, maybe in prestige later on, and they have to get into a state of mind that they do not see the victims as human beings. This is something that is very strict.
It's something, when you look at the case of the Islamic State organization, there's been a lot written about a sort of dehumanizing process that goes on when new recruits arrive, and in order that they can be taught to carry this thing out. Is there a sort of destruction of the person that needs to take place first?
No, it's not destroying the person and building another one. It's just a group dynamic, a culture of a group, bringing people to believe that they are serving greater cause. And, you know, the Islamic State, which is not an organization, an entity of terror, it's much larger than an organization, has this culture of death and bringing people to carry out mass execution. What they were doing in France was a transfer of the culture that they spread in Syria and Iraq to the cities of Europe. And those people who went there from Europe adopted this philosophy, and some of them executed people like this Jihadi John, the famous or infamous Jihadi John, and others, and now they are bringing this to the heartland of the West.
Part of the problem for the security services trying to fight this threat is that there are people in Europe who've never set foot in Syria or in Iraq who are inspired by precisely what you're talking about. What can be done about that?
I think it has to do with community leaders that will detect them ahead of time, which means to cooperate with local community leaders in the Islamic communities. Plus, you need to have, of course, good intelligence in order to infiltrate, to prevent it. And second, I think it's the responsibility of the Islamic leaders and the Islamic scholar leaders who can have influence and show how distorted is the interpretation that these groups and organizations are giving to Islam, because they are the ones who suffer the consequences of it.
How important do you think it will be to destroy, to take the word of the French president, the Islamic State on the ground? How important is it to get rid of them the group territorially in order to fight the threat that they represent in the minds of people in many different parts of the world?
It's crucial. There is no other way to do it, because the Islamic State, said very quickly, the Islamic State is a combination of a promise, a fantasy, a promise for concrete and continuous advancement toward the implementation of the establishment of the caliphate, and ideological spread of certain ideas. Now you have to break this image of momentum. You have to break the image of successes. I think that without taking control, retaking control of Raqqa out of the hand of the Islamic State, in Syria at least it won't be helpful, and it has to be done also in Mosul in Iraq. These are the two pillars of the Islamic State structure, although it's much longer struggle against them.
Yoram Schweitzer, thank you very much indeed for having been our guest today.
Thank you.